but here we are in COVID land, but excited that Jamie is able to join us today. And this is our fabulous monthly luncheon. And kudos to Carol Chambers, who actually secured Jamie to speak about 8 months ago. So this has been in the works for a very, very long time. And who would have thought that we'd be in this crazy world we're living in right now? So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Catherine Harrington. I'm the proud president and CEO of the West Des Moines Chamber of Commerce. And thank you for being here for our monthly membership luncheon. We are very excited. Shive Hattery is our sponsor today. We have our board chair, Chris Nelson, is going to be part of our program. And thank you for sponsoring, Chris. We really, really appreciate it. Our vision for West Des Moines is to make West Des Moines the best suburban city in America to live, work, and play. And I don't know if you've seen Chris's really cool video, but check out our social media. And we ask that all of you take the West Des Moines Chris Nelson Challenge. We don't know what it's called, but right now that's what we're going to call it. So it's really, really fun. Think of unique ways that you can incorporate yourself into the live, work, and play model and be like Chris. So love that. I want to thank the Chamber team for their amazing work that they do. We work tirelessly every day to innovate, especially now during COVID, to help support our businesses and our community. I want to thank Kara Matheson, Anna Dowd, Bailey First, Nicole Langmaid. I also want to thank our incredible board members for their support, our incredible ambassadors that are there talking to our members, trying to find out what we can do to help our members, that help keep the chambership moving in a very positive direction. The city of West Des Moines, we work very closely with the city of West Des Moines, and I want to thank the entire community for your support. And with that, I am going to turn the virtual baton over to Bailey First, who is our leader in marketing, social media, and she's our events guru. Bailey, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, and thank you everyone for joining us for our September membership luncheon featuring Jamie Pollard. To quickly go over the agenda for today, after I'm done speaking, Anna will introduce our presenting sponsor, Shive Hattery. And thanks again for making events like these possible. We could not do our luncheons without them. And then our board chair, not our board chair, Chris Nelson, will introduce our speaker for today, who needs no introduction, Jamie Pollard. We'll have time for a Q&A as well today, so feel free to drop any of your questions that you have in the chat box, and I'll call on people to allow them to unmute and ask Jamie your questions. I also wanted to let you know that that this is being recorded today as well, just out afterwards, in case anyone missed out on hearing Jamie speak. So when you're not asking your question, please make sure to keep your mics muted. That's all. So now back to Catherine.
Thank you so much, Bailey. You make this all look so easy. And I'm sure a lot of people want to know your secrets of how you make this event look amazing, and all of our events for that matter. I'm excited to introduce Anna Dowd. Anna is our Director of Membership and Strategic Partnerships.
Yes, thank you so much, Catherine. And a huge thank you today to our amazing supporting sponsor, Shive Hattery. And with us today, we have a few members from the Shive Hattery team. So with that, I will pass it over to Chris Nelson.
Well, thank you very much, Anna. And Bailey, do you have that? You can change the screen up a little bit. I just want to say, I'm Chris Nelson with Shive Hattery, and I have with me today Chris Bauer. Wave a little bit there, Chris. And we're proud to be the luncheon sponsor for the Chamber, and especially for this particular event. We thought we would weave our sponsorship in with a little bit of information with Iowa State University as well. So take it away, Mr. Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Yeah, I think Nelson and I both work in our West Des Moines office, where 58% of our graduates are Iowa State alumni. So strong information, our strong grads there in the engineering and administration fields. And then out of Shive Hattery's company-wide portfolio, we have 112 professionals that are all Iowa State grads. So heavy into the Iowa State alumni. Next slide there starts going through a little bit of a timeline. We'll start out. So Iowa State University opened in 1858.
And Yes, as you can see in that picture above, I know that Mr. Bauer would suggest that I'm in that picture, but contrary to popular belief, I am not that old in 1988 to be on campus. But that's a good looking picture of the campus back then.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I see in one of those windows, Nelson. Shive Hattery is celebrating our 125 years in business here, which started in 1895. The top right picture there is a picture of our original office building. You can note that the cars there aren't quite 1895 vintage, but that building is our original office building that we were started in.
And then in 1954, the mascot Cy is born.
And then in next slide in 1975 then is the first game at Jack Trice Stadium, which Shive Hattery has a current project in, which we'll touch on here briefly in a bit.
And going down the timeline to 2003, Mr. Jamie Pollard is named 40 under 40. And I see a beautiful picture of him up above there. He looks like a happy cyclone there. And then on to 2005, Mr. Pollard is hired by Iowa State University.
Well, wait a second there, Nelson. You skipped the most important one. When I graduated back in 2005 also there, just before Jamie Pollard arrived. And I'm pretty sure, as the picture indicates above there, that I would have been the walk-on if Jamie would have been there a little bit earlier in my college career to get me onto the field there. But we'll let that slide.
Well, while that picture is nice and it looks good and gets me in the mood for football, I think that's about as close to walking on as you're ever going to get, Mr. Bauer. I think that was a nice move.
Yep. So then this year we do have our 90th project and have a number of ongoing projects. So the next slide there indicates a few of them that we've done in the recent years. So any Iowa State tailgaters know that the parking lots have been getting kind of in bad shape. So where the university and with Shive Hattery's assistance have been starting to replace some of those lots around both Hilton and Jack Trice Stadium there. So there's a few pictures of some of the ones that were done over the last few years, and hopefully we'll be able to get out and tailgate on those in the near term sometime. And then the next slide is an ongoing project that Shive Hattery is working on with the athletics department. Is you will actually be replacing the turf of Jack Trice Stadium there following the last home game this season. So we're working on that, and in essence getting the drainage and turf up to good standards after a number of years of use. So again, hopefully, like that top right picture from West Virginia a couple of years ago, we've got to keep those upsets coming. We've got to make sure that turf can handle the crowds down on the field to celebrate there. So both good things. So next, so why is a jackrabbit introducing Jamie Pollard, Mr. Nelson? Next slide.
Well, I feel like I'm getting that disappeared quick. Feel like I'm getting put on the spot there, but it could be because my hand went up first 8 months ago when this opportunity came up. It could be because Jack Trice and Jack Rabbit both start with Jack. It could be because I know people in high places. It could be that I've been to more Cyclone football games than I've been to any other college football games. Or could be because this is just a huge honor, and I am just proud to be able to do this today. So let me get started with the official introduction. Mr. Jamie Pollard is in his 16th year as Director of Athletics at Iowa State, and his vision for success and energy to execute that plan continues to have major impacts on campus, in the Big 12, and nationally. Here are some other major landmark achievements of the Pollard administration, which began with his hiring in the fall of 2005. Invested more than $250 million in new construction and facility renovations affecting nearly every sport on campus. Secured a $25 million gift, the largest ever received by ISU Athletics, that was the lead donation for the South End Zone enclosure at Jack Trice Stadium. Iowa State University is the only school in the nation to average at least 50,000 fans at home football games, 14,000 fans at home men's basketball games, and 9,000 fans at home women's basketball games in the last 9 years consecutively. He has assembled arguably the strongest coaching staff in ISU history. National observers have noticed the resurgence in Ames, and Pollard was recognized as 2019 Athletics Director of the Year by the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics, NACDA. Pollard added another prestigious assignment to his resume in 2019 when he was chosen to serve a 5-year term on the NCAA Men's Basketball Committee. Although COVID-19 canceled the tournament, Pollard begins his 2nd year of the 5-year term this season. Pollard is a member of the executive committee of the NACDA and will be the organization's first vice president in 2020. He has served previously as president of the Division 1A Athletics Directors Association and the Collegiate Athletics Business Managers Association. A former national champion long distance runner at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, where he is in the school's Hall of Fame, Pollard channeled his competitive drive into the athletics administration career. Prior to arrival at Iowa State University, he served in various athletic administration capacities at Wisconsin, Maryland, and St. Louis. He received a 2003 Street & Smith Sports Business Journal Top 40 Under 40 Award, the first collegiate administrator honored. Pollard has served as chair of the Big 12 Athletics Directors Committee and as president of the Division 1A Athletics Directors Association. Jamie and his wife Ellen have 4 children: Thomas, Annie, Maggie, and James. Thomas was an academic All-American and the Big 12 Scholar Athlete of the Year in cross country, and Maggie competes collegiately in cross country and track at Nebraska, where she has been a scholar athlete and a recipient of the Tom Osborne Citizenship Award. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Jamie Pollard.
Thank you, Chris and Chris. You guys get an echo now? I'm hearing echo. I don't know how to change that. Better? All right. Thanks, Chris and Chris, for that clearly improv comedy routine there. I'm sure there was no rehearsal on that at all. It worked just like in sync, so thank you. And as we learned in the as we were waiting for all of you to join us, our youngest son's probably going to be a jackrabbit, so you know we accepted Chris being a jackrabbit to be the introduction for today's presentation. Great to see all your faces. For those that their screens are at least up on the first page, some of you are people I know, and others are names that I recognize. So thank you for taking time out of your day today. I thought this is how we'll approach this. Obviously we'd have loved to have been doing it in person. It's probably more enjoyable for you and clearly more enjoyable for me to get to do it in person, but that wasn't going to happen. So what I'm going to do is kind of break this into 4 segments. I've got just a little overview of, what's the last 6 months, some reflections on what it's been like during this time period. And then the third kind of section of the program, I don't know if I'd call it, most asked questions, but it's just a list of topics that I wrote down that I know I'm going to guess many of you may have those same questions. And so I'll kind of go through those. And then the 4th section would be Q&A for any questions that you all have that perhaps I didn't address or that you thought about as you listened to what I'm going to share. So, as we sit here, I'm not going to say on the eve of a football game because technically it's another 2 days out, but it does feel like an eve because 6 months ago, we all began a journey that, none of us knew where and how and why. We just knew we were on this journey. And, unfortunately, we're probably a long ways from the end of the journey. But as I think about the milestone that we'll hit Saturday in Jack Trice Stadium, a lot has transpired during that last 6 months. And there's been a lot of, ebbs and flows and turns and starts and stops and bumps and bruises. And there were times I never thought we could get to this moment, but we are. And so, when I thought about that, I went back and I looked at some of the notes that I had when I met with our staff and our donors, back in March when all this was going down. And I think, it's interesting to go back and think, what were you thinking at that point in time? Because, we didn't know what we were about to face. And one of the things that we identified real early on in the process were 5 principles that we were going to guide the athletics department by. And what I thought I'd start with today is kind of going back and reiterating those 5 principles, but then looking and saying, well, how did we do against those 5 principles? Because those principles were what led us and helped our leadership. And so, those 5 principles were this. First and foremost is our top priority was going to be the health, safety, and well-being of our student athletes, of our staff, and of our own families. And that was the lens we were going to use to make our decisions. Secondly, we said it was going to be critical that we stay aligned with the university. And little did we know, and I think about that one, and we'll talk about some of that, staying aligned with the university, has probably caused, at least me personally, some of the most consternation in this whole process. Number 3 was we needed to create structure and motivation and accountability for our student athletes and all of our staff, including ourselves. Number 4, we needed to plan so that we were prepared for whatever the new normal was going to be whenever we were able to re-engage. And then lastly, it was going to be imperative for our athletic staff to stay connected with our ticket holders, our donors, our sponsors, business owners, other constituents, our community that so graciously support us throughout the year. And so here we sit, on Thursday, ready to re-engage. We'll have our first COVID athletic event Friday night. Our women's soccer team will play West Virginia. And on Saturday, obviously, our football team will play the University of Louisiana. And so when I think about, well, how have we done during that 6 months when I go back and look at what those principles were? And so one of the first things I think about is our testing results. Okay? The health and safety and well-being of our student athletes and the staff. And our testing results have been phenomenal. They've been phenomenal to the tune of we've done almost 2,500 tests of student athletes and staff, and we've had 2.3% positivity. But more importantly, last weekend we tested 616 student athletes and had 1 student athlete and 2 student managers, which is less than 0.5%. And then this morning, we had our second test of the week for those athletes that are competing this weekend. So we tested 143 football players, volleyball players, and soccer players, and had 0 positive. And so, I think there's some really telling facts from that. Number 1 is how our student athletes and our coaches have committed to doing what's necessary in order to live and thrive during this pandemic. Number 2 is I think they're leading. They're showing how you can do that. And number 3, I think they're inspiring others to believe that there is a pathway forward. And so when I think about that, it makes me feel good that, a lot has gone into having those good numbers. It takes great planning from people like Mark Coverly, our Director of Sports Medicine. It takes commitment from our coaches. It takes commitment from our student athletes. And there were some bumps and bruises early on. Although our numbers never were really bad, they did learn lessons early on about what happens when you test positive and you trace out some of your teammates who now have to sit out, not because of what they did, because they were around you and you didn't do what you needed to do. And so the accountability that has taught our student athletes and our coaches. But I think it also speaks to the third goal, which was we needed to create structure and motivation and discipline and accountability. And, I'll contrast that, and not because it's not intended to pick on the University of Iowa, because it's not. It's more of just using that as an example. So we've had a total in 2.5 months, we've only had 54 athletes have a positivity in their COVID test in 2.5 months, okay? 2 weekends ago, the University of Iowa athletics program had 93 in 1 weekend out of a cohort of about 450. Okay, what can you take from that? Well, what you can take from that is, I think it's a reflection of they're not getting to play sports. And there's no motivation. There's no reason to be disciplined. There's no reason to be held accountable because they're not doing it for any reason. And our young people they know what's at risk. If they want to be on the field on Saturday, or they want to be on the field Friday night, or on the court in a couple of weeks for volleyball, or when our cross-country team runs next weekend in Kansas, they knew what they needed to do. And that meant they had to make some decisions about what matters. You know, I've got a son that's, you know, on our cross-country team, and you know, he lives in a house on Beach Street, and they call it the beach bubble. You know, and they basically do their online classes, they stay in that house, they work out, and they go back to that house. And because they know what's at stake. And so I go back to those principles, and it just makes me kind of smile, because I look and go, our number one principle is health and safety, and our third principle was structure and motivation, and it's worked, okay? You know, the second principle, which was stay aligned with the institution. You know, we've worked incredibly close with the university leadership every step of the way. And, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the section 2 of reflection, because who knew, you know, to me, that is what you should do. But who knew that staying aligned with the institution was going to be the piece that probably caused us the most heartburn in the last couple of weeks. You know, that it's you know, it's caused people to question what we're doing, and all we were doing was staying aligned with what campus wanted us to do. You know, item 4, which was, you know, we must plan so that we're prepared for whatever the new normal is and how we're going to re-engage. And, you know, I go back and think about early on in March, we got all our staff together. We didn't know what we were really facing. We knew what we had already lost, the NCAA basketball tournament. We knew what that meant in the short term financially. What we didn't know was, you know, what really is going to happen in the fall. Are we going to have fans? Are fans going to want to come? Can they come? You know, will they donate? Will they not donate? What are sponsors going to do? And we knew that, you know, we had to make some tough decisions. And those decisions could have meant laying people off. They could have meant terminating people. But what we talked about was this, that when we do get the chance to re-engage, the way for us to be the most successful the soonest was to try to do everything possible to keep everybody intact, because you were going to need all those people. And so we made a decision early on, and you know, we were first, but we didn't do it to be first. We were first because, you know, we were working in lockstep with the institution and didn't have bureaucracy from the regents. They let us implement across the board 10% pay reduction and take out all the bonuses from all our coaches' contracts. And that decision initially maybe was controversial. I'm sure there was staff that, you know, we have people that are on contract that technically didn't need to do that. But we all put our hands in together and said, we'll be stronger in the long run if we're in it together. And so we made a collective decision. And now I can look and go, here we stand on the eve of that first game, and we got everybody to the starting line. We didn't lay anybody off. There were people that took pay cuts. Coach Campbell gave up close to $1 million, okay? But he was glad to do it because he knew his success on Saturday meant we needed to have everybody, not just him. And it's that kind of leadership and that kind of sacrifice that you can get to when you can have some principles on the front end that are going to guide you. And I look around at my peers, and you know, every day I'm watching people lay off more people and more people getting hurt by all of this. And I feel proud that we collectively figured out how to get to the starting line. Now we're a long ways from the finish line, and we may have to go back and do more cuts and have other tough decisions. But I know we put ourselves in the best position possible for when we re-engaged, and that was our goal back in March. And then lastly, you know, we said we needed to stay connected. And I think, you know, maybe to our own fault, we've been very transparent with our communications. We've been very methodical about letting people know what we're thinking. And unfortunately, you know, some people don't like to hear the brutal facts. And, you know, and they react to those facts very, very emotionally. But we just felt that that was the best way to move forward. And so, you know, in some ways, it's a little hard to believe we're at this spot that we're actually getting ready to play. But at the same time, it's also really inspiring because we got here, okay? So the second part is I just wrote myself notes that said reflection. So to kind of reflect on some of what I just shared. And I'd share with you that, you know, the last 6 months have been a huge challenge financially, emotionally, and quite frankly, physically. And I think I could probably speak for everybody on this call when I say that. You know, I don't think I'm telling anybody anything that maybe they haven't already experienced themselves or in their families or well, no, I think we have to recognize that there is a mental health aspect of what we're all have dealt with, and there's a physical aspect of what we've all dealt with. And I'm looking at Lance right now. You're in the middle of my screen, but I'm sure in your world you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you know, it has been a challenge. I'd also say our society is a mess right now. It's a mess. Everything is polarized. Nobody wants to meet in the middle to solve anything. You know, it's, I say it this way, everyone's an expert, and if you don't agree with their expertise, then they want to disparage you as an idiot. And it's really unhealthy, it's unproductive, and it's mind-boggling to me that we can't just say, just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I have to hate you. You know, it just means I don't think what you think, but we can all figure out how to come together to try to figure out how to move forward. And I mean, it goes back to the challenging emotionally and physically, the energy, the mental energy and the physical energy that's wasted in just trying to get people to come to the middle, to have solutions, you know, because we've become a society where everyone has all the answers, but very few people have solutions. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, our real virus, our virus is social media and this need that everybody's got to weigh in on everything. And, you know, if they don't like what you said, they can't just say, I disagree. They got to try to take you out when they disagree. And it's unhealthy. You know, we need solutions. We don't need answers. And, you know, trying to find those solutions, I've used the analogy, it's like trying to thread a needle, you know, and that's harder. And those of us, as I look on this call, I'm probably one of the older people on here, but as you get older, thread the needle gets a lot harder because you can't do it unless you put these puppies on, because that cold just seems impossible to get through it. That's kind of how it's felt a little bit with COVID right now is, boy, trying to find that solution is really, really hard because people just want to attack you if your solution isn't what they want. And so as I thought of my reflections, I wrote down, it's 13 things that kind of just build on each other in a little pyramid here of public leadership cycle at Iowa State. And so I'm going to share this with you because I think this will then start to answer maybe some questions that I know people have had about why things have been decided the way they've been decided, okay? And so I'm going to start with, and you know, I'm looking at Catherine right now as the West Des Moines Chamber with, you know, you can probably bring this into your own world just in the West Des Moines area, you know, and, but I'm going to start with this and say, the city of Ames needs Iowa State University. Without Iowa State University, the city of Ames is not what it is, okay? So that's a foundational principle. The university, Iowa State University, needs students, Okay, without students, there's no need for faculty, there's no need for the athletics department. Okay, those are two fundamental deals. Okay, so the university, in order to stay viable, needs to bring students back to Ames. Immediately, some of the community get upset by that because you're bringing all these people back to this community that are going to make me sick. Okay, but let's keep in mind this community doesn't exist if you don't have the university, and the university doesn't exist if it doesn't have students. Okay, but to bring those students back, you can't. You know, this whole dilemma in higher education, people go, well, why did all these colleges bring students back? Well, let me tell you why they brought them back. Because if we just go online only, why do I go to Iowa State? I might as well just go to, you know, my local community college. I mean, I can get online anywhere. So you need to bring them back, okay? But when you bring them back, that means you got to put them in the classroom, which now means faculty have to be in the classroom, which now means faculty are upset because they don't, not all, and I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but faculty then get upset because they don't want to be in the classroom with these students that may get them sick. Okay? So you can start to see the bubbling up of we're going to have waves, it's not going to be calm water. Okay? Now we start getting closer to football season. Athletics has to make a decision. Are we going to have fans in attendance? Number one, you know, we need it financially, but number two, all the fans are asking that question. You can't just avoid not answering the question. So the athletics department comes up with 3 plans. No fans, 25%, or 50%. Okay? Now, you know, I'd be disingenuous to say, hey, the 50% makes my job easier on one front because it helps with the revenue, but I'm not naive to think the 50% doesn't come with its own set of issues, because if it turns into a mitigation disaster, you know who's going to get blamed, right? But we talk through that, right? The university says, wow, we put in place a 50% attendance policy in classrooms. So we really need athletics to be at 50%. Okay? So that's where we all agree collectively. We're going to be at 50%. Then we find out our students do what the students were going to do. We bring them back. They are students. Everybody on this call that was a student at one time, don't throw stones at them, because you probably did and thought just like they think today. And so they go, you know, old people like me go, oh, those idiots, why did they go to that bar? Okay, well, when I was in college, what did I do? I would have probably been in that beer garden, okay? So what happens? The first week, the positivity rate of the students is 3%. The second week, it's 3%. Everybody's going, whoa, things are going good. Boom. The third week, it's 13%. The fourth week, it's 28%. Okay? So, as the university gets that information, there's a meeting, and they decide we maybe need to go online only. So there's a discussion about that, about going online only. The discussion's had with athletics. We agree. If you're online, we have to go back to the 0 fans. Everybody's in agreement. Okay? Over the weekend, we just get a call, and the campus says, you know what? I think we really need to keep the students in class. We need you to have attendance. Because if we have the students in class and you come out publicly and say no fans, you're not in alignment with the institution. So, you know, okay, we'll go back and implement the plan. Now at that point, it's no longer 50% because we've already offered people the opportunity to opt out. So now we're down to about 25,000, but we even thought it'll probably get down to 20 by the time we get to September 12th. But we were around 25,000, hence why we said 25,000, okay? So we go forward with the press conference, we announce, and what happens? The faculty and the community abandon Dr. Winterston. They turn on her almost instantly, forcing her to have to change her decision. Okay? Obviously, when she called me that night, I wasn't happy because I knew exactly what was about to happen, which is, what does the Des Moines Register do the next day? Headlines, athletics is irresponsible. Now, all we did in that process was follow the lead of the university and got caught trying to be in alignment. Okay? Immediately, the regents asked, we want an updated budget. Because how are you going to do that without fans? You're now a $30 million loss, not a $17 million loss. And Iowa's dropping sports and laying off people. So what's your plan? We need it by Tuesday, September 8th. Okay? So athletics outlines its budget challenges. We're going to possibly have to lay off more people, or lay off people, or give people more pay cuts. We may have to eliminate sports, but don't underestimate that our staff's not naive enough to go, nobody on campus has taken a pay cut yet, but you want Matt Campbell to take a second pay cut, okay? How come all these people in the community are still getting subsidized to the tune of $1 million for the arts that the university is funding, but you want to drop a sport? And so all we did was lay out. We didn't say anything was going to happen. I personally didn't think campus would have the wherewithal to say we're going to shut down the arts. But I felt that needed to be out there because there were a lot of people that they didn't care. Just drop a sport. It's not our problem. So we laid out 3 possibilities. And the faculty and the community went crazy. How can the campus not want to subsidize arts? And so here we lie. The world needs the needle threaded, and you're either over here or over there. And neither one is right or wrong. As I wrote back to somebody today, because the viciousness, the overly self-righteous, the experts have all come out of the woods. And when they come out of the woods, they immediately say, well, those people in athletics hate the arts. No one said we hate the arts. Just like when I responded to the person this morning, I said, by the mere fact you just wrote me and said, I hate the arts, I didn't assume you hate our wrestlers, or you hate our swimmers, or that you hate a academic program that Dr. Winterstein may need to drop. It's just a reality that there's only so much money and somebody's got to make decisions. And no one's going to come out of this unscathed. No one is. But when it hits somebody that didn't matter when it was affecting somebody else, they get all up in arms, and hence goes back to where our society is right now as a mess. So that's kind of my reflection on just the cycle of public leadership. It isn't always as easy and as straightforward as some people think. All right, third category, topics. So I'm going to do some quick hitters here, and then we'll maybe throw it out to some questions. So I've got expectations for this weekend for football games. So, what are those expectations? I wrote down performance of the team. I hope well, because I really don't need that misery on top of everything else, but I don't get to control that part of it. What I do know is, part of getting to the starting line in football was thinking differently. And so, the ones practice with the 3s, the 2s practice with the 4s. You never let Brock Purdy and the backup quarterback be together, because you can't afford, if one gets sick, they contact trace out the other. So we've had to, this has been an off season and a preseason camp like none other. So the first time really, that the whole team's going to be together to live hit anybody is going to be Saturday. And so what you get might be a little surprise. So I hope it goes well. Hope's not a strategy. I get that. but I am hoping. You know, the one thing I do know is we got a very mature team. We've got a very committed team, and we've got an outstanding coach. And if anybody can navigate this, I would take Coach Campbell any day of the week, because he was a realist from day one. And he understood that probably the team that gets through this fall season as the champion probably will be a combination of a team that is talented, but also a team that's very mature, and a team that put in place the structure, discipline, and accountability to actually get through the season. And those that, you know, kept their Neanderthal, I'm going to scream the loudest and get my way, will probably end up having situations where they're going to be either down good players or not even be able to get to a starting line like we've seen this weekend with several games around the country. So, you know, the performance of the team, I'm holding my breath a little. I'm trusting the process and hoping that it all goes well. You know, for those of you that'll be watching on ESPN, yes, there will be some fans in the stands, okay? So I'm just forewarning, because people will go, I thought you said no fans. So on the east side of the stadium will be our full marching band and our spirit squad. So they will be in the stands, socially distant. Our band actually has face masks that allow them to play their instruments, and it captures the spit, saliva. Don't ask me, that's the band world. The spirit squad will be wearing masks and yelling in their megaphones, but we wanted them there on the TV side to give color and pageantry and some kind of atmosphere. On the press box side, we will have the parents and families of our players, of the Louisiana players, and I made the decision that our athletics department staff and their families will also be in the stadium. I just feel our staff has done extremely hard work during the last 6 months, and I just feel like I want them there, and I think they want to be there to support one another. So there will be people in the stands. So when you tune in, it won't be totally empty. What it sounds like on TV, I'm holding my breath and trusting our marketing department. You know, can't micromanage everything. So you got to trust people that they're going to figure out how to give Coach Campbell and our players as good a home field advantage as we can get. But what that'll sound and feel like, you know, is anybody's guess, because you really can't do a dry run of this. So stay tuned. Hopefully it'll look good on TV. Testing. How does testing work? What kind? How often? Who? So, you know, the Big 12 was adamant about the testing protocols, and that's why we continued to move forward, where maybe the Big 10 and the Pac-12 did it. Sports were put into categories of levels of risk. You're either a 3, a 2, or a 1. Contact sports like football, volleyball, soccer are all level 3. So level 3 sports mean those student athletes have to be tested 3 times a week. So they're currently being tested on Sundays, Wednesdays, and those are both PCR tests being done by our vet lab. So a big shout out to the veterinary lab at Iowa State, because that they stepped up and are doing testing over there for us. The PCR test is a very sensitive test, so but it takes a day to get those results. The Big 12 wanted to make sure that there was a certification test. So there's a certification test on Friday that'll be an antigen test. An antigen test is not as probably as, if I use the word invasive, you may think, you know, how deep you're going in the nasal. That isn't what it is, but it's more of a sensitivity. The antigen test, the results can be done in a couple hours. So the Big 12 hired a company that is coming in and testing all Big 12 teams in all sports, either the day before competition or in those sports where, you know, a day before they leave, where maybe they don't compete immediately or fly by charter like football. And then that company also flew down to Louisiana. They're testing Louisiana on Friday morning. and then there's a certification of who tested negative, and that's who can play in the game, on Saturday. So those sports are going through a rigorous test. It's not inexpensive. The testing on Friday is about $110 a test. So, it adds up really quick. The PCR tests are about $40 to $50 a person. So, we're going to probably right now, unless things change, over the winter with different testing and possible saliva tests and some other stuff, we're looking at probably close to $2 million of unbudgeted costs just to test. So again, going back to that principle of health and safety and well-being. That's the process. It'll be a little less regimented for if you're a level 2 sport or a level 1. For example, cross country is a level 2. And those decisions were all made by the NCAA of what level the sport was. So cross country does not have to do 3 times a week. They have to do once a week, and then they have to do a test the day before they compete. And then as we roll into the winter sports, they will go through the same leveling, and they're all currently going through testing now. But as their seasons start, they will go into a 3 or a 2 time, just like football. Will we have fans at future games? Okay, a hot question. I haven't given up on it yet. I will tell you, we're not going to put ourselves in the position we got put in last time, where we announce something and then it can be pulled away because of political pressure. If there's a legitimate health reason to pull it away, that's one thing. But we can't do that to our staff. We can't do that to our fans to put people in that position again. So, where we are currently, we're probably around 20,200 right now. If we were to say we were going to put fans in the game on Saturday, that's how many people are left after the others have opted out. Where that number will be a month from now for the Oklahoma game, I don't think it'll get too much less than that, but if I was guessing, it's probably going to be in the 18 or 19,000 range. If we're going to allow fans in, we'll probably have to make that decision probably 2 weeks from tomorrow, because you're going to need 2 weeks to implement it. And, again, I go back to when that decision was made last time. You couldn't have picked a worse time to have, the results of the students to be a hot spot, and the New York Times to write what they did, and the White House to say what they did, and but you don't get to control that, and you got to make decisions, on a different interval than what could happen publicly, and that'll be the risk we would have to take if we want to try to have fans, but it's not off the table. We will continue to push on that. What we will know over the next 2 weeks are a couple of things. One, we're going to know more of where we are in terms of how many fans would be coming. Number two, we'll have further results of what is the testing going on in this community. I shared with you earlier, the students have been 3%, 3%, 13%, 28%. This past week, they were 14%. And I envision that number will continue to go down. So that would be in our favor. And then thirdly, we're going to have a game Saturday. So we'll get a real live sample, and we'll get a whole bunch of other live samples from around the country, both in college and in the NFL, where there'll be fans in the stands. And, so we'll take all that data and, collectively try to make a decision again, and then go from there. Student athlete eligibility. Get asked a lot about that. One of the best things that was done, at least for the fall sports, was the decision was made that this season technically doesn't count. And that was a big thing when we were voting on whether we should play or not play. Dr. Winterstein and I met with our football players. Our football players were unanimous that they wanted to play, but they only wanted to play at the time if they knew what was going to happen with their eligibility. They didn't want to be in a spot like they saw their winter sport peers last year, where the season didn't conclude, but it cost somebody a whole year of eligibility. And so the decision was made by the NCAA that basically for the fall sports, this is a mulligan year. So regardless if we get in a whole season in football or one game or no games, it doesn't count towards their eligibility. So the good news for us is, although Brock Purdy's a junior, he technically has 3 years of eligibility left. You know, I have a son that may never leave Iowa State because with this ruling, he'll actually get 7 years of eligibility, and he could become the first Iowa State athlete ever to be on 5 straight Big 12 championship teams if they win it this fall, and then he gets to come back and do it again next year, which is kind of a cool feat. I told him that that record may never get beat unless we have COVID a year from now and he beats it and we do it 6 times. So, because I'm not certain we'll ever have COVID line up with a time when a student athlete was part of a team that won 4 straight Big 12 championships. So there's going to be some unique stories. That's really the gist of that. I mean, Brock Purdy could put the all-time passing record out of reach forever because he'll have 5 seasons to do it. So, but that was a right decision for student athletes. It will be a little bit of a challenge to manage going forward because if you think about it, you know, there's technically 20 to 25 seniors on the football team that now will be on the team that wouldn't have been on the team a year from now. So those next group of 20 to 25 freshmen, you know, have not 3 classes ahead of them, but they're going to have 4 classes ahead of them on the football team. So there are issues like that, but, you know, that's on us to try to figure out. Basketball season, getting a lot of questions, you know, people about, well, what's going to happen with basketball? I wish I knew. You know, what I would tell you is we've been, when I say we, our industry has been so focused on just getting football up and running that basketball and wrestling and the winter sports, we're just now kind of turning our attention to it. You will hear next week, the NCAA will be making an announcement on when the start of basketball. It's anticipated that that will be backed up 2 weeks to November 25th. I'm on 2 committees. I'm on the NCAA basketball committee, but I'm also on the working group in the Big 12 that's making recommendations about should we play non-conference, should we not, how many games should you play, you know, how are we going to handle things related to basketball like we decided to make decisions in football. So that'll all be taking place over the next couple of weeks because it'll be rapid fire because that's going to be upon us really quick. Social justice. You know, if we didn't have enough issues, we have to overlay then the social justice challenges and trying to, you know, be great listeners and great problem solvers for, you know, our student athletes, our faculty and staff, our community that quite frankly are struggling with some really heavy issues that as a society, we failed on miserably. And, you know, I've had people, you know, reach out to me, you know, again, polarization, you know, they better not take a knee. They better show some respect. They better do this. They better not do that. And it's just really challenging. And what I would tell you is this is, you know, unless you've sat down in a locker room full of student athletes, most of which are African American, and hear their stories and listen to what they and their families have experienced. If that doesn't hit your heart, then you got a heart of stone. And it's unfortunate again in our society that this issue has been hijacked by some that are trying to make it a political agenda. And as a result, it's made it harder for those of us that are in positions of authority that have to recognize I've got a lot of African-American student athletes and coaches that are hurting and are looking to me and others for what are we going to do? How are we listening? How are we acting? What are we going to do? And trying to navigate that, trying to thread the needle in a way that is responsible, but also doesn't send the wrong message to other people. And it's not easy, folks, but I feel like we've put ourselves in a good spot at Iowa State, and you know, we're doing some things in our department. The Big 12 will be doing some public things this weekend to try to help advance those causes in the right manner. But it is truly a challenge. And, I had it last week. I had our fans writing me because they watched other games and saw stickers on helmets and patches on uniforms and said, I'm done donating if we have that on any of our uniforms. And, what I really want to do is say, I'd love to put you in our locker room and you tell those young men that what they experienced didn't happen to them. And I'm going to give you an example, because you can sit here and talk as a leader, and I'll get emotional when I say this, but it's a real life example, okay? Real life example. There's those of us in the athletic department, just it comes with the position, you get a courtesy car. So I drive a car from Stiver's store, okay? Didn't think much about it till I got pulled over for the first time in my life. I got pulled over 2 years ago in South Dakota for speeding. Never had a speeding ticket ever in my life. But I got pulled over, and actually it was right in coming across, and anybody that's been in that area, Chris, knows exactly what I'm about to say, is in South Dakota you can drive unlimited. And then all of a sudden you cross into Iowa there by Sioux City, and it's a total speed trap. And I got pulled over. Okay, I had my family in the car. It was 9:30 at night. We were coming back from a youth track meet in South Dakota. And when I got asked for the registration, I reached into the glove box, and the registration doesn't have Jamie Pollard's name on it. It has Stiver Sport. And I'm telling you, that was really hard to explain to the trooper. Because his, why this isn't your car? What, how can you prove this is your car? And so I'm trying to explain it. I'm getting out my business card, okay? But we were ultimately able to resolve it, okay? I have a young man on my staff who's one of our leaders on my leadership team, Charles Small, Senior Associate Athletics Director, African-American male, has 2 children, 4 and 2, a wife that's a PT. They're driving through Ames in his courtesy car, and he gets pulled over in the city of Ames in the courtesy car. Gets asked for registration, hands his registration over, and it's some dealer, I don't even know who his dealer is, but it's a dealer not in Ames. He gets taken out of the car, put in handcuffs, and put in the back of the police car while they call the dealership to verify that the car's not stolen. Now tell me that that was necessary. And tell me that that didn't have some kind of social justice implication. And when I heard that story, I was just crushed. And I'm thinking, wow, what did you do to deserve that? Okay. Now, fortunately, it got resolved, but those 2 young kids in that car are scarred. His wife is scarred because how he was treated. And those things are happening, folks. They're happening. And they shouldn't be happening. Tough to switch gears from that one. I said that these topics would be abrupt. A couple other items that I had on here, just real quick, some facility updates, and then we'll go to questions. Student Performance Center. Major project. We're almost done with it. I mean, it was scheduled to be done in January, so that's a long time still away, but it feels like, if you come around the stadium right now, you can't miss this building. It's the most expensive, largest building ever built on Iowa State's campus. It's a new academic center, dining facility, locker rooms for all our sports. It will be the epicenter of our athletics department, and very proud of what it's going to mean for the overall good of all of our student athletes, not just our football programming. It's been a major undertaking, and can't wait for that to open up in January. And one of the things I'm disappointed about for our fans is there's a lot of fans that haven't been to Ames in a while, and if they came and saw that facility right now, they're going to go, wow, what a game changer, because it really has changed the landscape around the building. And ultimately, when everything gets done and the new north end is done in the stadium, it will be a game changer. So very excited about that. some other facility projects, the Hilton Seaman project, the parking bridge, the entertainment district. Most of those projects they're still there. They've got different shades of ice around them, or different quantities of ice around them, just because of the uncertainties right now financially, about when and how we could go forward in any of those. But we're going to continue to push, and because eventually we're going to have to move back into the reality of moving forward on those. And, as Chris said in his intro, one of the projects that got delayed at least a year was redoing the football field. That was going to be done this last off season, and now we're hoping to do it for the next off season. So there's other projects like that that have just kind of had to be victims, at least temporarily, of the challenges of COVID. So with that, maybe we now go to questions. Bailey, I don't know if I answered some of the questions that maybe you already had, but if other people have questions, I'm ready for them.
I know you definitely answered a lot of my questions that I had written out beforehand. That was a really you hit the nail on the head on so many different things that I know a lot of us are interested in hearing about. So, but I do know, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to start dropping those in the chat box. You can send them to everyone. You can send them just to me. But anything you have in mind, drop in there.
And we're 5 minutes ahead. I want for the record to say, you gave me to 12:40 and I'm ahead of that.
Yeah,
so
you got through so much. I thought I was a fast talker.
So can you guys just, because I don't know if any of you have had to do what I just did, okay? And so you don't get the joy of, looking out at the audience and going, okay, that person doesn't really care for what I just said. That person was agreeing with me. So in general, was that a good overview of everything? You can give thumbs up, thumbs down. You can do this if you said so. All right.
You can drop your approval in the chat box. Thumbs up. I'm getting some questions come through now too as well. But I do know that Lance Farrell has something that he wants to contribute if Lance wants to unmute. And
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hey, Jamie, I feel a little guilty. I haven't gotten a speeding ticket for a few years, but I have several on, so you made me feel a little guilty there getting your first one at such a ripe age. But I
wanted to get through my whole life without getting one, so I am mad at myself that I got one.
Yeah.
And for the record, he did not let me off the hook.
Oh, no.
I paid that fine.
Well, so I'm not as seasoned as Chris Nelson there, but I was 80 to 84 at Iowa State. And so I've seen a lot of different coaches and athletic directors come through. And I got to tell you, I believe you're a world-class. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you're doing and hanging in there. My computer shows my audio is flaky out. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in the business world, we talk about how fortunes are going to be lost and fortunes are going to be made during this whole pandemic, and how Amazon is one of those fortunes being made. I think the same thing is happening with sports. I believe there's going to be some rising stars go to the top, and I feel like this like a derecho hit Iowa, it also hit Ames with this thing, with everything you're going through. And I believe, as you probably do too, Jamie, that we have a championship coach and a championship team right now lined up to do great things. And your approach of this with faith, hope, and love is remarkable. And I just want to give you some kudos for that. And realize we're going to get through this, and we're going to come out better than we ever were. I have faith in that. And as my taekwondo instructor, Mr. Pak, always said at Iowa State, tomorrow is a new sunny day. And so I just want to give you that hope and faith that it is, and it will get better. And I can't imagine the stress you're going through. And I really admire how you handle it. I was there. I was actually on the golf course on a Monday doing a tournament when I heard about Celia in Ames, and you'd been scheduled to speak in Des Moines for months before that, and you spoke that Thursday after her tragic death. And I was in awe at how you handled that and how you are handling this. So I just really appreciate you.
Well, Lance, I appreciate those kind words. This is not a setup by any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to show you something right now that sits on my desk. Never to be forgotten. We'll have that anniversary coming up here this month. My worst day as athletic director. We take student athletes and we tell their parents that we'll be their parents. We didn't get to send her back home alive. I'll always. That'll always be something that I will wrestle with for the rest of my life. I don't know what we could have done to prevent it. But, you know, when you're the leader, you're responsible for the good and the bad. And, you know, I just am sick to my stomach that that happened. But Lance, I appreciate it. And you're right. You know, part of, you know, Matt Campbell and I talk about this all the time is win the day, get through the day. And, you know, and tomorrow will be a new one. And, you know, what you have to know is there's times you gotta, you know, as I've said, step away from the ledge. And I know last week, you know, and I still do. I mean, I'm carrying some anger and some frustration in my heart. And I know that that's not healthy. And I know that's not right. And I'm trying to do my own soul searching because, you know, just what I saw play out here in the last week of just the viciousness and, you know, some of the things I talked about earlier made it hard to say, I want to get back up tomorrow morning and do this again. And so you got to find those times, you got to recognize that and know when you, quote, need to step away from the ledge. And, you know, last Friday was one of those times I needed to step away from the ledge. My refuge is Lake Panorama. And, but I have to say, a weekend at Lake Panorama still wasn't enough because I came back and, you know, I'm still not right. I'm hoping Saturday helps get me a little bit more right because I think that'll be some therapy too. But you are right. You got to, your Taekwondo instructor is giving good advice, is tomorrow's a new day and there'll be fresh problems and newfound solutions.
Awesome answer. Love that. That was a great question. Thank you, Lance, for asking. And then I have another question here from Tim Fitzgibbons. I don't know if he wants to ask it or not. He emailed it to me. Give him a second to see if he wants to unmute and ask, and if not, I'll ask it. So his question is, do we know if there will be bowl games at the end of the year, and is there a plan for a playoff series?
So right now the bowl partners are still planning to go forward in some form or fashion. The college football playoff is scheduled on as originally scheduled. So, you know, obviously how the season plays out for everybody, you know, will ultimately dictate that. But I know our bowl partners are still planning to have bowl games. You know, they may look and feel a little different. They may not have fans, who knows, right? I know the television partners will be, you know, they've got an appetite for them because they need content, right? You know, within the Big 12, the only one, you know, the Alamo Bowl is our only bowl partner where the other side of the partner is a conference, the Pac-12, that's not playing. So clearly the Alamo Bowl would have to find a replacement, you know, partner. But yes, that is the plan. And, you know, that was one of the things that the student athletes, you know, talked about is, you know, what is our purpose? You know, what are we playing for? And so, you know, we've got 4 teams that are playing this fall for Big 12 championships: soccer, volleyball, cross country, and football. And, you know, volleyball and soccer, at least as designed right now, the NCAA is planning to have their NCAA championships in the spring. So the winner of the Big 12 this fall would be our representative in that spring championship. Cross country, unfortunately, you know, there's been talk, but it's pretty hard to have a cross country championship in the spring because you have track and field, so it's kind of duplicate. But there'll be a Big 12 championship, and maybe there'll be some kind of meet we'll put together at the end of the year that'll kind of simulate a national meet. And then football, the plan is to have the bowl games and college football playoff. You know, if there was ever a year to win the college football playoff for Iowa State, this would be the year, right? I mean, because it would go down in history as who, you know, everybody, you know, tell me who won the 2016 college football playoff, and most people just kind of scratch their head. Or tell me who was in the Final Four 2 years ago. You know, most people are like, I think everybody will always remember who was the national champion in the year of the COVID. And so if we ever were going to have the stars line up, this is the year to have it happen. So stay tuned.
I love that. I need that on a t-shirt. So next we've got a question from Trevor Otto, if he wants to unmute and ask.
Sure.
Hey, Trevor.
Hey, Jamie. Thanks for all the info. This is awesome. I was curious, as you've gone through changing all these processes and ways of doing things, are there any good things that have come about that you think you'll keep and continue doing as you've learned?
It's a great question, Trevor. You know, I'll tell you what Coach Campbell said to me. He said he'll never, ever have spring football like we used to do it. Because what he took from this was, you know, because basically for the spring and most of the summer, you know, the football players weren't doing what they always do. You know, what they normally would have been doing is padding up and hitting one another, and people get injured and dinged up. And what they spent the whole off season doing, they were with our version of Lance, you know, Dave Andrews and his staff, getting stronger, bigger, fitter, and healthier. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, Coach Campbell is like, you know, I never do that again. It's going to completely change how we approach the off season. And I think there's going to be more of that than not. I selfish, you know, personally, not selfish, that's not the right word to say. Personally, you know, I think about, you know, how many times pre-COVID have you been on an airplane and somebody next to you was sick and you were just like, are you kidding me? I get stuck next to the sick person, you know, and then you're like, oh gosh, I don't want to get sick. I can't afford to get sick, you know. And, you know, 9 months ago, the thought of putting a mask on to protect yourself, you know, you would have been embarrassed to do that, right? You know, the only person that wore a mask on an airplane was somebody that probably had cancer or was sick themselves, you know. I've thought about it myself and thought I'll probably wear a mask anytime I'm in an environment like that with a group of people I don't know. So I think there's going to be things like that that are kind of just the new way to move forward. And you know, that might help, you know, with a lot of things that we've dealt with in our country, whether it's flu or, you know, that spreading germs, that maybe we'll be better at it. So, but the biggest one is what I shared with Coach Campbell identified with.
Cool.
You know,
thank you.
Obviously, I could add this. We're on Zoom, right? You know, I don't want to give up personal interaction because I think that is so important, especially when you're having to deal with tough decisions. But I also think that there's a lot of efficiency. I mean, I'm on committee after committee, and, you know, half my day is going from one meeting to the next meeting and finding a place to park, or traveling to some city takes me 4 days for what could have been accomplished in one Zoom call in an afternoon, okay? And so I think that there's going to be some efficiencies like that, but then that's also going to have an impact. As I look at Catherine and going, you know, from a Chamber of Commerce standpoint, you know, you don't want those people not coming to a community. So I think we're going to have to think through how both sides of the equation handle a lot of this.
And then one other quick one. I'm sure you enjoy watching all sports, but is there a particular sport that you get the most joy from getting to watch?
Quite frankly, I'd probably say I enjoy basketball the most. And the reason I say that is because the constant action. I mean, it's tough for me to enjoy football. And the reason I say that is, it's my job, right? And so with every game, as soon as you don't win a game, you're not going to be undefeated. And now people are already, a percentage of the people want the coach fired, right? And so the pressure and the anxiety during football really takes the joy out of watching the game. Where in basketball, and the other part of football is, if you really took a 4-hour football game and said they probably played 25 minutes, okay? So most of the time, people are sitting around debating whether we should have ran, passed, played this person, played that person. You go to a basketball game, most people couldn't tell you if we're in zone defense, man-to-man, what kind of offense we're running, And so the game just happens at a much more rapid pace, which I think, and any one game, so you lose to Kansas. Okay, well, we're going to get another shot, and you can lose 10 times and still be in the NCAA tournament. And so the only time you get that sick feeling is the last, at the end of the year in the NCAA tournament, right? So basketball tends to be a little more enjoyable to watch. But I'd also say, and I'm not just playing to my constituents, is, if you just sent me to watch wrestling, I'd probably tell you it's not as exciting. But when you know the wrestlers and you know the matchups, and you know what one match may mean in the end, then it's really fun. And I mean, you get into it. And so wrestling, I think, it maybe brings out some of the bad in me because you get a little too animated. So, but good question, Trevor.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. So now I've got a question here from Chick Herbert, if he wants to unmute and ask.
Hey, Bailey, thanks. Jamie, thanks for the time today. Really good stuff. I was going to wear my helmet, but with my headphones, I couldn't get it over, so I apologize. I'm not game ready. My question was, how do you keep your sanity? And I mean that seriously, because I guess the one consolation I'll give you is in the private sector, it's not always that fun either. We don't have quite as many constituents as you do, but the ones that we have are very vocal and equally hard to appease. But I'm just curious, you mentioned Lake Panorama, but what is your step away activity? I mean, you can't get down there all the time. How do you keep your sanity and stay as even as you can be when you're getting pot shots left and right?
Well, thanks for raising that question. And, I'd be a hypocrite if I said I figured it out, because 5 years ago, I learned the hard way that I clearly wasn't doing a good enough job of it by having a heart attack. So, I'd also say, I'd like to say that was this huge wake-up call, and I figured out from that point forward how to try to deal with it. And that wouldn't be fair either. I'm probably more aware of what's happening to me, that I'm, I don't know if I'd use the word sanity, but physically, I can feel the stress, and, and I know it's unhealthy. The unfortunate part of what I do, at least for me, and everybody's wired, differently, but, I would contest that what I do is it's equivalent to being a drug addict. Not that I know what a drug addict's like, but if I was to try to guess what that's like, is it's very addicting, okay? It's very addicting. And there's highs and lows that come with that addiction, okay? And, getting to stand on the stage at the Power and Light District and have, 15,000 Cyclone fans that, want to cheer at anything you say. You can say anything and they're going to cheer. That's powerful, okay? But it's also toxic, because you have to remember that those people can also be angry with you, and those create low moments too. And so, for me, exercise is really important. As my body ages, Lance, it doesn't cooperate like it always used to. So I've learned that even walking is better than not running. So that is part of it. And I'll say this is, I'm not getting emotional here. My wife's a saint because, you know, she has to listen to me talk it out, because I don't get to talk it out with a lot of people, because quite frankly, who can you trust to talk it out with? Because, you know, you're afraid someone's going to turn it on you. And so she gets the brunt of me having to stay sane. And quite frankly, if I was her, I would have tuned me out a long time ago. And maybe she does, and I just don't know it. If she does, she's a heck of a you know, fooler. But and to some degree, my children, because my children get the, you know, they have to hear it too. Although 3 of them have gone out, you know, have left to go to college, so they don't have to hear it on a daily basis. So, but I think that you know, you got to have some people you can confide in, and you know, she's a rock when it comes to at least listening. So.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. And it's good to marry up. And I have the same thing with my spouse, and I don't know what I'd do without that.
Well, you know, you got to get it out of your, you know, you got to get it off your chest, you know, and, you know, you know, I mean, I'm a bad example because I failed miserably health-wise, but, you know, people would say, well, you know, who's going to have the heart attack? The type A person that's always, you know, very extroverted and out there, or the person that's got it all bottled up inside them and is type B. And, you know, more often than not, I'd say the extrovert's at least getting it off their chest. But that didn't necessarily work for me fully. So.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Chick.
Thank you, Chick. So I've got another question here from Dan Fitzgerald, if he wants to unmute and ask. He's still around. He must not be. So he's just wondering if you can explain the eligibility for athletes and the effect it has if a record is set with the new Mulligan rule for the fall, I think.
Yeah. Good question. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. You know, are there going to be asterisks after everything? I don't know. You know, there could be asterisks after everything that happens in 2020, 21. So we'll have to cross that bridge. I mean, the example I used with Brock Purdy, you know, is reality, right? I mean, he probably will end up, if he stays all 3 years, he'll end up with the most passing yards. Heck, he'll probably get there in a year and a half. He won't even need all 3 years to do that. But he could put a record that is just totally unattainable, and then people coming in the future, is that fair? And, you know, so, you know, could be like when you look at track and field records where there's the 100-yard dash record and the 100-meter dash record, you know, when we went metric. So we'll see.
Awesome. And next we've got one from Creighton Cox. If he wants to unmute.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Creighton.
Really appreciate everything, the vulnerability you're showing today, the emotion, and all your leadership. I don't envy your position, but I by all means respect everything you're doing. So thank you for that. A question kind of outside of the sports. There was a lot of discussion last fall about that mixed use district between Jack Trice and Hilton. Is there any update on that? Any direction it might be going?
Well, it's obviously it's, you know, it's on ice right now, you know, and a little bit of the challenge with that is, I mean, one, there's just, you know, economically is that there, you know, is now is not a good time. I mean, where are those businesses coming from, and who's going to step up to infuse that? But at the same time, there's also that notion of you want to be ready because some investor is going to go first in reinvesting in communities. And, you know, you want to be on the front end of that. And so, but you also, you know, have the PR issues of, well, you know, we're over here talking to the regents about being $40 million or $30 million, you know, in debt. And so then how can you be talking about that? But, you know, at some point in time, you know, we will need to spend to get out of the situation we're in. I mean, it's just not going to correct itself. Eventually, you got to go back to, you know, people take risks all the time. And, you know, again, I keep pointing out to some people that are on it, but, you know, I look at Catherine and go, you know, I mean, when Gene Meyer was the mayor of West Des Moines and the decisions were made to go forward with Jordan Creek and all that area, I'm sure there were people that thought that was too risky, right? And so people do have to make those decisions. And we eventually will have to again. So we haven't said the project is, off the table. It's just, not right now probably isn't right. Yet this last week, the debate over arts and funding, and some of those same people that are all up in arms about the arts were the same people that didn't want the entertainment district. And you're going, well, then how did you ever think, I literally had, more than one person write in the last week that says, the university should have just told the Rymans. The Rymans are the ones that donated the money for Ryman Gardens. They donated the $25 million for the South End Zone, or the Bergstroms who have donated all the money for the football facilities. But people actually write and say, well, the problem is the university should have told those people, the Rymans and the Bergstroms, that we're going to use that money to do an arts facility. And it's just amazing to me that people think that they get to decide how other people spend their money. But there's people that think like that, right? And so, the university put this arts, entertainment, multi-use district in play to try to address some long-standing challenges for this community and our institution as it relates to the Iowa State Center. And there's people that are kicking and screaming about that, and so you just go, gosh, I'll say this, and again, it sounds to me like I'm picking too much of names, but it's probably public leadership in any place. But, in the city of Ames, we didn't want a mall, but we wanted more retail. Okay. We didn't want a new pool, but we want a place for our kids to swim. Okay. We want our elderly taken care of, but we didn't want a healthy lifestyle center. We want more convention and tourism business, but we don't want a convention center. We want an institution, but we don't want students. We want a football program, but we don't want fans. I mean, you can't do it that way. And so we'll be back to the drawing board, and, the team that is put together has got a great plans. It's just, we got to roll it out at the right time, Craig.
Awesome. Thank you, Creighton. And then we have got time for one more question. So I was just wondering, Jamie, what your favorite ISU athletics moment from your tenure has been so far?
Oh gosh, that's hard. I've been asked that before, because I got multiple ones, right? I'm gonna cop out and say a couple just because they're hard to differentiate. So I'll just rapid fire is, obviously, the night we beat Oklahoma State in football that Friday night, because it happened in this stadium and all those people got to enjoy it on the field, right? That was cool. The Alamo Bowl, although the game didn't turn out the way we wanted, those 3 or 4 days for Cyclone fans in San Antonio on the Riverwalk was unbelievable. And if you didn't go and we ever get that chance, go. San Antonio may be one of the greatest cities to have that type of an event. And it was like a 3-4 day continuous pep rally for Cyclone fans. It was really fun. Watching Lisa Cole do what she did, probably one of the greatest athletes ever to be at Iowa State. But little young lady from Fort Dodge that never won a state high school championship, nobody recruited her. She comes to Iowa State, and she still is the all-time fastest runner in the history of the NCAA. Dave Zabriskie, a wrestler, winning the heavyweight championship at the NCAA tournament, NCAA championships, in his last match as a student athlete. Incredible. Those are the moments that stick with me, because I just think about just things that just made me get emotional. I'd be lying if I didn't say watching my son run, but that's a little biased.
I think that bias is totally fair. The dominance of the men's cross country team is just incredible. And I'm sure it doesn't hurt to have your son on that team to get you excited about that. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the chat box, but there's so much positivity in there. Thank you everyone who joined us today, and thank you so much, Jamie, for joining us and speaking and being so honest at their incredible event today. And I know we're just at 1 p.m. I know Nicole wants to highlight some of our upcoming events, but wanted to just again say thank you, Jamie, for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. And for those that weren't on the call at the beginning, is you get an IOU for me to do this in person next year, the week of the Cy-Hawk game, because that's what this was supposed to be.
I think we're all excited about that. You're getting more thumbs up. Alrighty, so then I'm going to swing it over to Nicole here just so she can really quick highlight our upcoming events, and then we'll end the event for today.
Yes, thank you very much. That was a great event. Thanks, Jamie, for being here. I'll highlight quickly just two events that are coming up. The end of this month, the Eat Week will be here before you know it. So mark your calendars for September 25th through October 4th. You'll have the opportunity to support some local West Des Moines businesses and restaurants during this crazy time. And then second, we have our 2020 economic update, which is Thursday, October 22nd. That's from 11:30 to 1, and you can register for that on our website. So I'll hand it back over to Catherine to close us out for the day. Thank you.
Well, gosh, I think we should do this every week. I know you're super busy, but you are so inspirational, Jamie. You speak from the heart, and wow, I thought I was the only leader that cried. I guess I'm not. So that's good to know. I tell you what, but you are an incredible leader and so inspirational, and I will never, ever forget this event. And I don't think anybody here will ever forget this event. So it sounds like we are going to win since we have a talented and mature team. So that is amazing, and so excited for next year, Jamie, to see you in person. So thank you so much for all that you're doing. And we really appreciate you so much. Thank you to our members, our sponsor, Shive Hattery. Thank you, Chris Nelson. Really appreciate it. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon. Of course, as we always like to end every meeting, stay positive, but test negative, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.